All ready for nutrition? Perfect. The first kid is on sleep. Yeah, so go ahead. Get to it out. Get to it out. We get that out. It's not today. We can color your reduction. We'll get those really quick. First, but it's going to be honest. Get it, get out. No, probably not. We're safe there. We can change the pool.
But we are live on YouTube.
Okay. So that's where it's much.
Yeah, don't. Just kidding. We don't care. We don't care.
We're just taking off.
Well, I think now that's in the face, right?
Do a lot of and then a lot of airline, a lot of things that you yogurt, a lot of chicken sausage.
Good to see you.
Once a month. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, David.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I didn't know either. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, they were officers. Dude, I'm so happy.
So I just.
I live right by it.
Oh, really?
Congrats all the people, made it on time. Ash, what do you think, like 3-4 more minutes?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, very much, very much.
So it's fun to hear.
Yeah.
Rodney! Oh, doing well, how are you? You ready? Feel free, wherever you want to sit, sir.
Well, I am attempting some level of mastery, but I do like that. It's just that today I did, months. I did add it, so I like started out as a
Yeah. Your squat tech game was really good at this. I No, he learned bracing like perfectly. He maintained it. Good. Good spot to sit right
I'm
here.
saying scale.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Probably That's what I was yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, we're up. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, who's here to get some credit for CEUs for coaching PT? Because there's a sign-in sheet if you want to get some credit. I know you're a coach.
NASA.
Hey, who else is a coach, I guess? Who wants credit?
then, you know, what you'll do is you'll set this to your agency that gives you your credits.
We'll send you this through, like, the certification.
Yeah.
0.2 CEUs. Two or so. 10%. Yeah. CPR, yeah. Can't think of the group you're with, it's longer and shorter.
I'll take it.
Mel! Sir? Yes, sir. Yeah. Alrighty, welcome. Who's excited to learn about some nutrition? There we go. I know it's warm, so there we go. If you need water, we have a water fountain over there. If you need coffee, Joe makes a mean cup of coffee. We got our coffee maker. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we'll find some ice cubes. Anyway, who came to the last time that we had Dr. Nathan Jenkins out here? Perfect. This is good. It's only a couple. Awesome. So, in my humble opinion, Dr. Nathan Jenkins is the greatest nutrition coach probably in the world. He's published 80 articles in peer-reviewed journals. If people have ever tried to publish something and go through that process, you'll know it can take years to get one article published. This man's done 80. His areas of background, well, he's got his PhD from University of Maryland. He did his postdoc in vascular biology. So he's very well versed in everything, not just nutrition, but also fitness. He's a CrossFit level 2 coach. When are you getting to level 3?
Actually, I'm not allowed to sit for it.
Okay, perfect. Well, two is incredible. Yeah. His areas of research primarily fall under obesity, diabetes, nutrition and management to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, human metabolism, drug intervention with performance. So he's pretty much done it all. Today he's going to be discussing how you're going to eat for body composition and performance, whether it's leading up to a sporting event, whether you're doing it in a more longitudinal format, massing, maintaining, cutting, etc. He's going to be able to answer all your questions as well. So any questions that may arise as the seminar goes on, feel free to hold on to them and he'll be able to answer those. But without further ado, Dr. Nathan Jenkins, appreciate you.
Mike, this is the best introductions I've ever had, like my entire, all the talks I've ever given. Now it's the second time he's introduced me, and it's like, I think I said the same thing last time. I wish my mom was here to hear all this. It means a lot. I just start by saying thank you guys so much to Mike and Ashley for having me. It's been an awesome visit so far. I kind of want to just put this talk to the side and tell you guys all about this epic sushi dinner we had last night. I could probably talk for 30 minutes about how amazing that was. Just because you guys are such amazing hosts. Thank you so much. You're so gracious. And it's just been really awesome to be working with you guys now since I guess it was last spring with this, a long time now clients, and I would say very, very good friends. And over the last 6 months or so, since I last visited, maybe more than that, got to know a lot of folks on the coaching staff, this crew that's sitting there in the back. I love you guys. I'm so glad to be here. We're looking forward to this for a long time. Okay, so a little roadmap for today. I actually have 2 different PowerPoint presentations files to, and I hope that doesn't that's not too daunting for you. I can't help it. I'm a former academic. I use slides to aid in my talk. So there's a lot of good visuals on here. I think they're good. So I know there's a little bit of a glare going on. So if you need to reposition yourself so that you can see a little bit better, that's fine. Having said that too, at any point, if you want to stop me and, get my attention to, hey, slow down there, home slice. I've got some questions. We can talk a little bit more about that. I'm more than happy to do that. We may save some stuff to the end as well. Kind of open format. Okay, so first part. So there's, like I mentioned, there's two sort of separate talks here. And we'll take a little break. Obviously, you guys are gonna need a break. I'll probably need a break in between the two for sure. So you're not gonna sit here and just listen to me babble for 2 hours right now. I also know it's a really nice warm day, and you guys want to get outside. But the first part of this is what I call Nutrition 101, just sort of the basics, the fundamentals of nutrition, specifically for body composition and performance. This one's more directed at the general population. My bias is, by general population, I mean the general population that might be working out in a CrossFit gym or a similar type of gym. I work with RP Strength. My primary clientele is CrossFitters, although I do work plenty with the general population, people who just work out in a more traditional gym, or with a lot of people who don't even work out at all. So, it kind of covers the basis. But that would be, so I'm just telling you a little bit about the bias to inform that. The second part is specifically nutrition for competitions, with the bias towards specifically a CrossFit competition, but there are sort of broader lessons and takeaways for any type of, I would say, strength sport competition. So competitive weightlifting, competitive powerlifting, there's some concepts that will apply to that as well. And honestly, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about, I borrowed, stole from the endurance community. So I'll touch on that in a quickly. So, okay, without any further ado, again, I'm glad that there were only a few of you here last time, because this first one is pretty much exactly the same talk that I gave last time. I did that for two reasons. One is there's power in repetition. If you're anything like me, as when I was a student, or the students I used to teach at the university, you give a lecture one time, and then how much do you actually retain? There's actually statistics on that. It's more like somewhere around 5 to 7%. It's been several months, but again, a lot of this is new for you guys. So I'm going to start this off with just a general question of how many of you have found yourself confused in the area of nutrition at some point? Put your hands. Okay, pretty much most of us are confused. I know I certainly was, even though I come from the field. As Mike mentioned, my training is in exercise science, exercise physiology. We didn't really have minors in grad school, but if they did have one, I would probably have to have a minor. It's safe to say I would have had a minor in nutrition. I've been confused about nutrition. That's actually what led me to eventually down the path that ended me becoming a nutrition coach at Leeds University for that. Part of the reason it's so confusing, if you can see, I've got a bunch of buzzwords here on the screen around nutrition and dieting. So like paleo, blood group dieting, clean eating, all these terms that you see, intermittent fasting, all these terms that you see like on social media, you go down the rabbit hole on YouTube, there's these various different camps and types of diet. And the general consumer is often very confused about, okay, so which one of these diets should I be following? And you see different, you see some, usually some sort of a character, shall we call them, an influencer or so forth, that's speaking with great confidence and authority, but if you guys have ever noticed this, something I've picked up on is confidence is not necessarily correlated all the time with competence and accuracy of information, right? So that can be confusing. Just this influx of information, not being sure exactly which of these different sort of ideologies should be followed. The other reason it can be confusing is that nutrition, messages about nutrition and health from the government, from the public health authorities within the federal and state and local government, whoever, can be confusing. It can change one. So like when I was in school in the late 80s and early 90s, I learned that there were 4 food groups. I don't know if that's still true or not. I think it's changed. And then there was this whole disaster in the mid-2000s. You guys remember this whole food pyramid thing. That only lasted a few years because nobody understood it. And now there's this MyPlate thing that you can go on like the USDA website. That one's actually seems to be a little bit better, but still, point being, nutritionists, we get confusing messages from our sort of policy leaders and authority figures in government on nutrition. And then, especially concerning to me, something I deal with on a probably, honestly, weekly, certainly monthly basis in my work with clients is a lot of people seem to be getting their education on nutrition from like Netflix documentaries, right? And so this is just an example of one of the more recent ones. There's actually been a couple even that have come up that made big splashes and waves in social media and stuff. But this was probably the worst, most egregious one in the last few years, the Game Changers on Netflix. And when that one came out, I found myself answering questions that were like this. There's probably a documentary on Netflix that differs from my perspective, but here's what I think is just some guy with a PhD, right? And so they're usually really, really bad, these documentaries. The entertainment, but they're not education, they're not science-based, they don't reflect best practices and that sort of thing. So, multiple reasons why nutrition is confusing. Generally speaking, to kind of put a bow on this concept, I want to actually have a little bit of interaction with you guys, and I want to hear you just respond to like getting groups or anything like that. But I'm going to put up the next few slides. I'm going to put up several different examples of food items or categories of food, and I want you to just give me your gut reaction. I need you guys to like talk back at me a little bit here. Participate some. Start with butter. Good for you or bad for you? What's your gut? You're not allowed to like equivocate. You have to pick a side. Good for you, bad for you. Which is it?
Good.
So good.
So good. All right. Okay. Good for you.
Bad.
Sports drinks. Sugary sports drinks. Okay. A little bit of a mix. I see some shaking heads. But maybe the consensus of this group is bad for you. Keep this one in mind. We'll get back to it. This was the category here is dietary fats. Some of which are from plant sources like avocados. Okay, pretty good for you, right? Animal proteins. My people. This has got an answer. There's only one right answer here. Any vegetarians or vegans in the audience, I love you. I'm glad you're here, but I call this is sacred to me. And again, I just want you guys to have that kind of hold these things attention. It's good for you, bad for you, right? So give you the idea. Dairy products, good for you, bad for you. First answer I heard was bad, and I hear some argument amongst the people, and that's okay. Eggs. How about whiplash when it comes to eggs, right? It's not every few years that you hear from the government, like a new study comes out and then the news picks it up, and all of a sudden eggs are good for you again, now they're bad for you again, and then they're good for you again. I'm not sure what the current answer is, but again, that's something that we talk about. And then the last one, alcohol. Always in a crossfit, they're like, please let it be good, right?
In moderation.
Well, okay, that's I heard that in moderation, and hopefully a lot of you were thinking like, okay, I forced you to pick one side or the other, and I made a dichotomy, and that was on purpose. And it's that tension of being like, okay, I've got to pick one or the other. We also kind of have this understanding, like it depends, right? It is actually what I would say is the answer. It depends. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on context around which. What else are you eating in your diet? Is it a one-off thing, or is it something that are you like literally subsisting on sports drinks, which a lot of children do, right? Or sodas and so forth. Well, that wouldn't be so good. But again, the point is, I'll finish making the point with this statistic from a study that I really like. It's a study done, a population survey done in the UK, and they asked the respondents about different categories of food, basically all the ones that we just kind of went through. And one of the questions was, they had the people rate on a scale of like 1 to 5, 5 being the most, is I'm not certain if this food is healthy or unhealthy. And I don't have the numbers here, but you can appreciate, so this is all the different categories. There's a significant degree of uncertainty about how to even answer the question, right? And so, and then another takeaway from the study was that about 80% of the consumers, again, this is in the UK, but I think it's probably pretty universal, consumers think that messages about diet and health are confusing. And I think we made that point. And so that point being, if you've ever been confused about nutrition, you're not alone. And our goal for today is to come away with at least a framework to like help make it make sense. Give us some practical, both science and real world evidence-based best practices for thinking about nutrition, how to structure a diet, what kind of priorities should I have when thinking about food to eat for the purpose of getting my body composition where I want it to be and fueling for my workouts and all that good stuff. Okay, so that's what we're going to transition to. I guess the last transition here is a little joke from Calvin Hobbes. They're looking up in the sky saying, I suppose it all makes sense when we grow up. I'm here to tell you that it's really small, and you guys can see that, but spoiler alert, it does not just magically make sense. It didn't for me. It took me coming across the RP diet, RP Strength, the company that I work for, and the sort of authors of this paradigm that I'm about to walk you guys through of what we think of as our nutritional priorities for body composition and performance. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. This is where we're going to spend the rest of this portion of this, the rest of the part number one here, is walking through this diagram. I know we got this later. But walking this diagram, today I'm presenting it as a pie chart. Sometimes we present it as a pyramid with the most important stuff on the bottom and less important stuff kind of stacking up on top. I said it this way because I'm going to fill this in with a bunch of words and numbers and stuff, and it made it easier for presentation purposes. So before we get into all the details of that, let's just kind of orient to what we're looking at in this pie chart. You see the most significant component, the half of it, of this pie chart is, I have the label there, if you can't see, is calories. Total calories of the diet amounts to about 80% of the sort of importance or priorities when it comes to thinking about nutrition. And I'll fill in a little bit more on that in a second. The next largest slice of this pie is the macronutrient composition. We assign a weight of about 30% of the overall importance to that. I'll talk about the macros. That's just quickly, that's protein, carbohydrates, and fats. And I'll break that down a little bit about how much should eat and where you get it from and all that stuff. And before I go any further, just notice that once we talk about calories, we talk about macros, we covered about 80% of the overall picture here, right? And if you cover that, that's going to move the needle a long way for us, right? So that's really the most important sort of two priorities. And then also just go ahead and mention, and I'll come back to this, but again, calories is 50%, but we get our calories from our macros as well, so they really go hand in hand. So that's what we're going to spend a lot of the next few minutes talking about. And then the next three categories: food timing, what to eat, and when to position your different nutrients throughout your day. That's about 10% of the overall picture. Food quality, things like, should my food be organic or, farm to table kind of stuff, or is it a processed food? Where does that fit in? And supplements, which is where a lot of people want to start the conversation. That's where people want to just tell them a little bit about what I do, say like at a Christmas party or something. And my first question a lot of times is like, what supplements should I be taking? And I like to say, like, that's actually the last question you should be asking because it's probably the least important here. But it's worth talking about, so we signed about a 5% weighting to that. And so we'll talk about each of these categories in the next few minutes here. Okay. This stuff is not complicated, but it's simple in concept, but it's becomes difficult with execution. What I want to start with something that's very, very simple is this concept of calories. You may have heard, how many of you guys have heard basically calories in, calories out, that whole hypothesis, right? And maybe you've heard somewhere from some of those zealots on social media that I was referring to and some of the sources of confusion out there. There's a vocal minority of very confident and loud social media influencers who try to act and believe that is somehow false or bogus or BS or whatever. I'm here to tell you that just divide. If somebody tells you that calories in, calories out does not apply, is not sort of the law of the universe, then you need to run the other direction. It's really comes down to like basic physics: conservation of energy, conservation of mass. Calories are determined. The caloric needs of somebody's diet are determined by resting, the energy expended at rest, so your resting energy metabolism, and the energy burned through your physical activity, whether that's through like a CrossFit workout or running or structure type of exercise, and also sort of incidental activity throughout your day, yard work, playing with the kids, cleaning the house, that kind of stuff. So the sum total of your energy expended determines the caloric needs from your diet, along with the goal of, say, you're changing your diet, say you want to get your nutrition dialed in, about 80, I'm just going to use an example from the real world, 80 to 90% of my clients are come to me because they're interested in fat loss, right? So we adjust the caloric intake relative to the estimated caloric expenditure based on the goal. So the body weight, desires to lose body fat, we aim for a caloric deficit, right? We would aim for it to increase body weight, increase muscle mass, and we have to aim for a caloric surplus. If we want to maintain body weight, then we aim for maintenance calories. Like I said, it really is that simple. Anybody that tries to make it more complicated than that, they're lying to you, they're selling you something, they're zealots, whatever happens. So that's calories. Next up is, again, closely related to calories, is the macronutrients. And in a group this size, I know there's going to be varying degrees of familiarity and experience with macros and also calories for that matter. But just briefly, just make sure we're all on the same page. We've got three categories of macronutrients: protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Protein is going to be the main purpose from a body composition and performance standpoint. It does more than this, but building and repairing muscle. If you're in a fat loss diet, make sure the protein is adequate to maintain muscle mass while trying to lose fat. So they think protein for muscle. Right? Carbohydrates, think energy, particularly energy during exercise. So anything where your muscles are burning, you're breathing hard, where you're sweating, where or whether your muscles are under significant load and tension, like with weight training, that carbohydrate is your fuel for that type of activity. So that becomes very important for, again, like a CrossFit athlete or any kind of strength sport athlete, where you're burning a lot of energy, and all of those things I just described are very familiar sensations for you during your workouts. That means you're burning carbs. That means we need to be thinking about carbohydrates when constructing your diet. And then fats, again, they do more than this, but simply from an energy and body composition standpoint, fats are what you're burning. Well, most of us right now. There's metabolism going on. You guys are sitting quietly. I'm maybe burning a little bit more energy because I'm standing and I'm talking and I'm using my hands and all that kind of stuff, but still not really any significant high heart rate kind of stuff or anything like that. So fats are kind of the rest of your daily metabolism. That's the fuel for that kind of activity that's short of what we would call exercise. That's an oversimplification. I guess this is on YouTube. Come at me in the comments if you want to, if you disagree with that, but that's basically, that's a good working understanding of the different macronutrients and their role in sort of energy balance and energy expenditure. Quickly, just to show how visible that is from where you guys are sitting, but just want to put up a picture of some different sources, food sources for these macronutrients. Briefly, we've got carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and some sort of purified, for want of a better term, sources of each of those macronutrients. So things like your fruits and starchy vegetables, grains, pastas, breads, and so forth. Those are going to be relatively pure for your carbohydrate sources. Protein, you've got your lean animal proteins, your fish, and so forth. Those are going to be relatively pure sources of lean protein. Fats, your olive oil, your avocados, arguably nuts and nut butters are relatively purified sources of your dietary healthy fats. And then there's the areas that like overlap with these Venn diagrams, you've got pure sources. For example, whole eggs, egg with the yolk, it's going to be both a protein and a fat source. And for our protein and carbohydrate sources, we've got things like lentils, quinoa, beans, and so forth like that. So just, you guys can tell by looking at your face, yeah, Jenkins, we know that, we can move on. But just to kind of illustrate what are we talking about in terms of like, how does a macronutrient equate to a number, right? Equate to something you actually want to eat. That's kind of how I believe these are the only numbers I'm going to give you guys today. Maybe in the second talk, I might give a little bit of numbers. Just checking how they work. But just to give you guys a starting point, I wrote it to give this, okay, Jenkins, where do I begin with? I appreciate all these different categories, the percentage allocation of priorities in each of the categories that you're walking me through. Where would I begin in sort of setting up my own diet? Well, a good starting point, let's start with protein first. That's where I start when I'm making a diet for a new client. Roughly, you guys may have heard this before, but a good starting point is about 1 gram of protein per pound body weight per day. And if you never tried that before, what I will do is a little homework assignment for you. Never thought about like how much weight should I eat. Go home and map out what that might look like for you, and just be astonished at how much protein it actually. The most common piece of feedback, I have 2 pieces of feedback I get from new clients within about 3 to 5 days of being on their new diet plan is, oh my gosh, I've never eaten this much protein in my life, and the second was I've never eaten this many veggies. So it's a very high volume, it's a large volume of food to eat that much protein. It usually takes work, it takes planning. It can be expensive. Protein's by far the most expensive of food macronutrients. Sorry, I can't help inflation. It just is what it is. I feel it too. Casein protein powder has gone up from the time I started taking it in 2017. I think I was paying $65 on Amazon for a 5-pound tub. It's now, I looked at my subscribe and save recently, actually, it's gone up like $90. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use cottage cheese or something instead, because that's just like too much. But anyway, sorry for the aside here, but starting off with protein, aim for about 1 gram per pound body weight. Actually, just a little sidebar here, just to mention, something that we're playing around with RP right now with our clients is coming back on that a little bit. Some new research is showing that about 0.75, 0.8 grams per pound body weight is more than sufficient to maintain muscle mass during the fat loss phase and can even stimulate muscle growth, so sufficient for muscle growth. So there's some wiggle room on that one too. And that comes in handy too if somebody's really active and you need to increase carbohydrates. So anyway, good starting point there, though, 1 gram per pound. Next up is carbohydrates. This is the macronutrient category that's going to vary the most. If you think about these different categories being under control of like a dimmer switch, like a knob, this is the one that has the most play in it. Going down from about roughly half a gram, again, this is just a starting point, about half a gram of carbohydrate per pound body weight per day on like a rest day. You're not doing a whole lot of, not much exercise or any exercise. And I'm saying like a CrossFit rest day where you come in and do a 40-minute EMOM on the road, right? Like a true rest day where you're mostly just sitting or maybe some incidental physical activity. That's a good starting point. For everyday CrossFitter, I might go up to around 2, maybe a little bit more grams of carbohydrate per pound body weight. And most everybody's about, most of my clients are somewhere in the middle of those two. But then I say if you go up quite a bit more than that, depending on training volume, depending on goals, depending on needs. If you're hanging out with Mike Sell and you're having sushi, I can tell you you need to go ahead and 5x or 10x that. You're going to try to keep up with them. And hey, did I do okay keeping up?
You did awesome. I was impressed.
I mean, this man is about, well, 230 or something right now?
Just like 214.
215, 150 pounds. Listen, we were like almost roll for roll.
Piece for piece.
Almost piece for piece.
Like Rocky.
And then we went for cookies and ice cream after, and that's what he ate me under the table. I could no longer hang, right? But you know, for carbohydrate intake, it really depends on training volume. The intensity to a certain extent, but really it's the volume piece. So for example, I think I've got some competitors in here. You're doing 2 workouts a day, instead of the standard just 1 class per day of working out. I'm probably going to go ahead and go over this 2 gram per pound metric point to give me that 3, sometimes even 4. Personally, I'm doing a lot of CrossFit is the main thing, but I'm also training for a 10K. I've got 4 days a week where I'm doing a CrossFit workout in the morning, kind of a longer run in the afternoon. I'm pushing 3 to 4 grams of carbohydrate per pound body weight. And even though I do the profession, I look on paper, man, that looks like a lot. I know from living through it and doing it, I need it. So, again, quite a bit of play in that. And then fats, the way we approach fats when constructing a diet is coming back to this first things first, start with the calorie, figure out or get an estimate of the caloric needs, and then fill in the protein, figure out the protein requirement, figure out the carb requirement or recommendation, and then what's left as far as calories, fill in the rest of that with your fats. That's typically how I do it, and it usually works out to this ballpark of about 0.3 to 0.6 grams per pound body weight per day. You don't have to remember those numbers. There's no exam at the end of this, but I did want to give you guys this just as a starting point. Now, let me say, that's like, okay, gosh, that sounds like a lot for me to think about. That sounds like a lot for me to figure out and do some math and stuff. This is where, if you really are serious about this kind of thing, this is not a plug for me personally. I'm actually going to promote the MSP group and the nutrition coaches there. This is the perfect perfect reason to hire a coach, just to help you get started. There's also the RP Diet app, where it's a very low price point. It's something like, I don't know, don't quote me on this because I don't remember, but somewhere in the order of $20 to $30 a month, I think right now, maybe even less than that, depending on if there's any promotions going. Something like that can really help get people started if you're not already tuned in with that. And then after time and practice, for me working with my clients, I like to have an exit strategy, 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, depending on what they need. Teach the basics, make it sustainable, which is what we'll talk a lot about in the next few minutes, and then send them on the way, right? So this could be a lot to take in first, but I just want to give you guys something to start. I've been talking a lot. I'm going to stop there to see if there's any questions on anything that I covered so far.
It's not a question, but I feel like I've been doing PT for 10 years, and all my clients, they don't know what they're doing as far as like cutting, trying to gain or maintain. So it's a fight that I have as a coach, and a nutrition coach, or trainer, because I think the world wants cardio, the same more cardio go nutrition.
Yeah.
It's once you get this under control. But I'd rather do the nutrition.
Yeah.
You walk and see later.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah. So since this is being recorded, I'm going to repeat that and kind of summarize. So Jimmy's saying that basically, forgive me if I misrepresent, but to summarize, working with clients in the personal training setting, the human nature sort of, and this is kind of I think a cultural thing, people think that the answer to getting your body composition where you want it to be is just do more cardio, right? Just spend more time on the elliptical, spend more time on the treadmill, whatever have you. Gosh, I would rather chew my arm off than stand on a freaking Stairmaster. Now, there's a time and place for it. I know Mike and some of the folks in the bodybuilding community will, as part of prep, spend quite a bit of time on a treadmill walking. But for the general population, you've got a job, you got kids, you don't have time for all that. You can move the needle a lot quicker just by figuring out these basics of caloric needs, and then how to meet those caloric needs with sort of more optimal macronutrient profile. Which, by the way, it's a contrast to what I've just been talking about with what people are just like a typical American diet looks like. First of all, what do you guys think? Calories, are they in balance, in deficit, or in excess? Absolutely. Okay, all you got to do is kind of look around at the general population, right, and understand that most of us are in excess. That's number one. So get that straightened out, and we're going to fix without having to do all the extra cardio. And then two, the macronutrient profile is way up. Most people are not getting anywhere near enough protein for what we would recommend. Or if they do, it comes along with a lot of way excess dietary fat. And then, of course, carbohydrate consumption is part of this problem of being caloric excess. It's Mike, what we were talking about yesterday was the licks, the bites.
Oh, licks, nibbles, and bites.
Licks, nibbles, and bites, the little snacks that you walk by. That's an RP thing. But the licks, nibbles, and bites, when you walk by from the candy jar at work, and you just mind snacking on it, or the chips or whatever have you. Yeah, I mean, it's basically excess calories mostly from carbohydrate, fat, and protein consumption, right? Address that, and the perceived need for the cardio goes away. Jamie, did I summarize it?
Yeah,
Yeah, right. So, absolutely. So these are the big movers. If you get these things straightened out, then we'll go a long way to improving our body composition, our performance, our health, and all that other good stuff that goes with the critical effects of the rest of life are yeah.
I mean, on the macro side, particularly, how do these guidelines change for growing athletic teams?
Oh yeah. The question is, on the nutrition, on the macronutrient side, how do these recommendations change for growing athletic teams? That's a fantastic question. I would say the fundamentals remain the same. I was actually just talking with a member here this morning about that. Her son is very similar boat, frustrated, can't gain any weight and all that stuff. Take stock of the protein intake. If it's not in line with this, I would bring it up for sure. Step one. And then, gosh, and I would defer to Jimmy and some others who have more hands-on experience with this population. But first of all, time, hormones, etc., are on their side in a way for body composition. Metabolism is just so high, and they are so active. They're training, they're working in a particular sport and training in the weight room outside of that. It is difficult to keep weight on especially some of the young boys. And this also applies to the boys too, to a certain extent. It's going to be a hard time. You're going to have a hard time for a couple of years keeping up with all that. Your wallet's going to have a hard time keeping up with the grocery for a couple of years. The conversation I was having with the other athlete this morning, the 9 o'clock class, was looking back when I was 15 years old and what I ate. When my mother had put it in the cupboard and in the fridge. I don't think I could afford it now, because it's something like $11,000 a year that families spend on groceries these days. Okay, typical family of four. Anyway, okay. But just kind of do your best, the best you can to keep up with that, and then monitor things like get these. I would say see if these numbers are in line. If you're going to err higher on the carbohydrate, for sure. Certainly monitor body composition and monitor performance, and use that to kind of and subjectively how you feel during the workouts and how you perform during your games or matches, whatever your sport is. Start here and then go up. Sure. Okay, let's talk about food timing, food quality, and supplements. This stuff is brief because again the relative importance that we assign each of them is a little bit less than the other two main big categories. Food timing, really simple stuff here. We recommend eating. There's two parts to this. One is meal frequency and also nutrient timing within your meals. The first one is eat roughly every 3 to 5 hours throughout your day. wake up to when you go to bed at night, with your pre-workout meal timed such that it's about 1 to 3 hours before training, and then the post-workout meal about an hour, within an hour or so after training. Even those are not critical; those are just general guidelines. Call it plus. When I give a client a diet plan, it does have basic. So with intake, with the questionnaire, we ask for information about their schedule, like when you wake up, when you train, when you go to bed, any times of your day that you can't eat because you're like in work meetings or whatever have you. Kind of put all that in and break it, the plan out into meals. And actually have an example plan in the next set of slides, and I'll show you that. But I always say, listen, if I tell you to eat your lunch at 2 in the afternoon after your lunchtime workout, don't stress about it if you can't get it into like 2:30 or 3 o'clock. It's not, you're not going to turn into a pumpkin, right? You can't get it down. So again, it's where the meal timing that actually really comes into play from a practical standpoint is create a plan. We have a structure of it, as opposed to just winging it and say. That's why I don't give just like straight. Here's your total macros for the day. Go up, right? As a coach, I think it's those of you who are coaches, I would recommend. As a coach, I recommend breaking it down per meal so that they have kind of a structure to follow, and then if it changes within that structure need to happen, then they can. That's great. Right? What is it? Fail to plan to fail. That absolutely applies to this meal time. Yeah, Jeff.
When you're talking about post-workout meal, you want it within an hour. Does a shake count for that, or do you want like an actual meal?
It can be. So the question is, can the shake count as that post-workout meal, or do I want an actual? Here's where I think I absolutely do prescribe a workout shake that's recommend to be consumed. It's got whey protein, it's got some workout carbs in it. Recommend consuming that. During CrossFit workout, it's a little bit different. So like typical structure of the CrossFit class is strength and then Metcon. That's probably how most of you guys follow it. What I do is recommend sipping on that shake, maybe a little bit on the way to the gym, maybe a little during the first warm-up, a couple of sips between your strength portion. And then I'm not saying that when you got a 20-minute Metcon, you don't need to stop and drink during that. And also, there may not end so often. Well, I would say when you're doing Fran, you're drinking, your protein and your carbs, right? So then drink just the rest of that. And then there's also another game. That's how I write it up. The general answer to that too is, a lot of times like today, this morning, I didn't have a shake, no big deal. I'm just going to eat regular food later, move these macros around, there's flexibility for too. So, and then I have a lot of people who are like, I'm rushing. I do 5:30 a.m., 5 a.m. sometimes, CrossFit, rushing to get to work by 7. Can I have my first meal as like a smoothie on the way? It's like, absolutely, that's totally fine, right? It's totally flexible. So, great question. Another piece of food timing is timing your macronutrients throughout your day. That's a whole conversation, and I don't want to get more complicated than we need to. This is kind of like something that we're kind of known for this at RP, structuring our meal plans in this way. So what we do is keep protein intake steady throughout the day, or whatever it is. Usually somewhere between 3 to 6 meals. And when I get to 6 meals, a couple of those are shakes. So keep protein intake steady. So let's say easy numbers. You've got somebody that's getting 150 grams of protein, 5 meals a day, 25 grams of protein in each of those meals or shakes, whatever it happens to be. And then what we do is bias the carbohydrates around the workouts, such that about 60% of the day's total carbohydrate intake is positioned in that intra-workout shake and post-workout meal. And with fats, it's the exact opposite. So we put fats further away from the workouts. Why do we do that? Well, again, as we talked about at the beginning of this, carbohydrate is your primary fuel source for something like CrossFit or something like just straight strength training, endurance training, any kind of exercise. I can't think of something where I would actually call it training because carbohydrates are not your primary fuel source. So think about it that way, it makes sense. That's your fuel to prepare for the workout, and then as soon as that workout is over, what we're doing is starting the recovery process for the next session, whether that's later that same day or the next day. And I'll talk about this more in the next talk. This is the primer. When we perform something like a CrossFit workout or a hard run or a hard lifting session, we use something that's called muscle glycogen, which is a fancy word, scientific word for our muscles' carbohydrate stores. So what we want to do right when the workout is over is to start what we call glycogen repletion or replenishment, topping off those glycogen stores again. So again, so we get ready for that next workout. There's another advantage of having carbohydrate post-workout, which is to stimulate a little bit of insulin production, and along with that protein that you're ingesting both with that shake and that post-workout meal, sort of facilitates the delivery of that protein to the muscle so that you can start that muscle growth, repair, minimize to some degree, minimize soreness, or I should say, optimize recovery that may reduce soreness later on. So that's the sort of rationale behind it. Because fats are, what they do is tend to slow down digestion and absorption of the other nutrients. That's why we try to keep fats rather, keep fats a little lower in that training movement. We push those further away from training. Okay, so that's meal time. So meal frequency and nutrient partitioning within our meals throughout the day. Getting closer to wrapping things up here. Food quality. Again, back to some of this is like, should I be eating organic or not? Should I be eating organic or not really worried about it? Let me ask you guys what do you think. So, what do you think? There's been studies that look at this. Take an organic strawberry and a regular strawberry and assess them for a variety of qualities, of characteristics. Things like antioxidant compounds, phenol content, vitamin content, mineral, also carbohydrate content, which is one of the main reasons to be eating the strawberry in the first place. It's a carb source, right? What do you guys think is the biggest difference between an organic strawberry and a regular strawberry? If you know the answer, because you were here last time, don't speak. I think I heard it. It might have been from somebody who was here last time. It's not even. It might be pesticides. I don't know. But let's talk from a body composition standpoint. There are principally zero differences. It's exactly the same, but the biggest delta is the price. Right? Absolutely. So you're really from so that. Let me just preface this. There may be very good reasons. It may be pesticide concerns over that aspect. But from strictly besides potential toxicity, from like a macronutrient body composition performance standpoint, there really is not a compelling rationale to go like a full pendulum swing over to maximum quality organic or whatever description you want kind of food. Does it hurt anything to do that? No. But just understand that just like with anything else, it's trade-off. You're going to pay up for it, and you may or may not need to. So that's why. So a lot of times I get clients who are very concerned about, gosh, should I have? It would be really convenient for me to be able to have this protein bar or this otherwise quote unquote processed food, a Fairlife shake. It's something that's easy that would actually meet my macros, and they're almost like asking permission to have it. So, dude, I have that all the time. You know, because it's convenient, and there's always this rub between feasibility and sort of like quote unquote theoretically optimal, and what we do is try to thread that needle. Having said that, absolutely most of the meals, again, the biggest piece of feedback I get from clients is, hey, this is so much food. I mean, it's never eaten this much protein, never eaten this much veggies. The foundation is absolutely those whole foods. But the food quality, again, from a body composition and performance standpoint, is less of an issue. And then lastly, supplements. Again, this is where a lot of times, especially when I meet, not to pick on anybody's, particularly young men, high school kids, and college guys, walk up to me, you know, when I was at university, like after class on the first days, like, Dr. J, I really want to go supplement. What do you think of this supplement, that supplement? A lot of times they'll ask me like a specific brand. I've never heard of it. And again, that's the first question. It really should be the last question. Let's get all of this other stuff ironed out and dialed in, and then we can talk about tinkering and optimizing things with the supplements and so forth. So at RP, there are 3 supplements. I'm going to actually mention a 4th in a second that I've started taking or coming around to lately. But protein, which is not really, it is a supplement, like if it's in the form of powder, but we want that in also with the macros. Caffeine is a good one. It's very well documented to increase what we call central drive, or basically your willingness to work hard and try hard and push yourself during a workout. It's also a natural analgesic. Caffeine reduces the perception of pain and perceived exertion during exercise, which might come in handy during a CrossFit workout. Effectively, what it will do in a CrossFit workout, this is a hypothesis of mine, is you're going to still hit your maximum effort, but the pain, since the pain receptors are being blocked a bit, you're going to be able to work at a little bit higher output at that 10 out of 10 pain rating. So don't let me mislead you and think it's not going to hurt as bad. It'll still hurt bad, but you'll be able to work a little bit more with a little bit of caffeine. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. A cup of coffee is fine. And then the last one is creatine. Very, very good. It's probably the most researched. Well, it's a toss-up between caffeine and creatine, which is the most researched. Creatine is very, very well documented to improve strength and power type performances, improves body composition, puts a bit of water retention in the muscle. Good water retention, good way to storage in the muscle. So that increases, there's a modest effect on lean mass. There's cognitive benefits to creatine. It's really something that we should probably all take. So those are the three. The fourth one that I'll mention is especially if you're doing long duration type CrossFit or other types of exercise, it might be worth it to consider an electrolyte supplement. Something really simple, nothing crazy, but about 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams, 1,500 milligrams probably better of sodium, about 300 to 500 milligrams of potassium. And that'll go a long way to, especially if you've ever dealt with cramping or, and then also along with that, of course, adequate hydration. So when we sweat, we lose a lot of water. It's pretty straightforward. I think we replace that water by drinking, right? But we also lose a lot of electrolytes when we sweat, so it seems like it's helpful. This is kind of an anecdotal experience on my part, working with some CrossFit and also myself with higher volume exercise. And I live in Georgia in the heat. We've been actually under heat stress down there for about 6 weeks or so now, believe it or not. I know you guys are just coming out of the fall from the winter, but that's something I've been working with lately, and it's a good effect. So. Okay, so that really covers what I have to say about these different categories. Let me just kind of start to wrap up here. This is all great stuff, right? This is all good, hopefully actionable, as well as like scientifically backed information for you guys on what the things that go into coming up with a good approach to nutrition and something that you can use. But none of that matters without the most important piece, which is consistency. So and that's what I actually end up working with clients on the most is this consistency piece. So let's say you get your diet, you get all geared up, and you're excited, you got your plan, and you got your macros that you're gonna hit, and then oops, there's an office party, somebody brought a cake for somebody's birthday, and I ate a piece of cake just to be nice. You know what? What are you gonna do? Well, a lot of people, truly, I deal with this all the time. They just think, oh, I failed. I stopped. I'm gonna stop here, right? Well, that's not going to get you where you want to be faster. What I always have to do is just look forward, not backward, and move on as though nothing happened. Just jump right back on the plan. Don't need to restrict yourself in some extreme way for the next 24 hours or 40 hours to make up for those overages or whatever. Just focus on the sweet spot. I think is about 9%. What I mean, 90% consistency or adherence with any given plan. And a lot of times I'll get clients telling me, I'm going to follow this 100%. I actually I learned that actually to walk. I love your enthusiasm, but we need to walk back from that because you know why? Because that's not realistic. No one's 100% every 20%, right? So then you don't get too lax. You get to low about. I'm just kind of using these numbers subjectively. You get to below about 80%. Well, and then that's 8%, 5-day week. That's 1 day a week completely off plan. And then people are getting frustrated with not making progress. Well, maybe we can tighten up the consistency a little bit, right? So again, that sweet spot, 90 to 95% adherence with the plan, 5 to 10% just being a normal person and eating things like sushi and cookies and ice cream. Deep dish after this later today, right? That's really the kind of, like I said, the sweet spot is the way to go. And then the last one, maybe a little bit redundant, but I just added this in. A lot of people. This would be where my coaching hat, not so much the science hat, but don't be afraid to fail. Whether this is nutrition or some new crazy big CrossFit you've never seen. Again, it's making the same point again, but maybe a little bit different way. What is human nature, right? You try something once and you mess it up, or maybe you're good, quote unquote good for a week or two, and then you mess it up, and you think, oh, I'm bad at that, right? So I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, of course you're bad at it. You haven't done it before, right? And this nutrition is no different, right? It is absolutely. And so what I tell people, what I tell clients is, what if I told you that personally, on a personal level, I've just learned because I've been in this coaching space for so long. When I fail at something, I actually get excited about it. It's because that's my opportunity to learn something, right? Like I try. Okay, here's an example. My friends took me to play pickleball for the first time a couple weeks ago. And I thought I was going to be, I'm kind of athletic, kind of pick up on things. No, it was a complete disaster. I was like, oh, sweet. And I got a pickleball court in my neighborhood. I get to practice with the other alpha dads in the neighborhood. And then in 6 months, I'll be beating them. Because, the first day I was terrible, right? Or I could have just said, I'm bad at pickleball, right? this stuff really applies to nutrition so much. And so that would be my encouragement. Like, this is all great science stuff and theoretical stuff and kind of the meat and potatoes, sorry for the pun, of our approach at RP Strength. But this mindset stuff about focusing on consistency and don't be afraid, don't be discouraged when actually not if, but when you fail, because it's inevitable. That's just as if not more important than all of this. So, okay, we are about halfway through our time. This is what I have for that first talk. Let's stop there. We'll do some Q&A now. If you guys want to, maybe take a few minutes of break before, I know I need a few minutes of break before I start battling again. So yeah, I'll stop there, see what questions do you guys have. There were some good ones already, so.
I guess I do a lot, so we can go track. We need to get them to track and be a task. So you maybe just have them do it for 6 days. I guess this is a good question for the coach.
Yeah.
When you have a client track for 6 days and you get them macros based off that, it's always a component.
So,
Per day, what is the value in client tracker too?
Exactly.
So, okay, let me see if I understand the question. So, the premise of the first part of the question is a lot of times clients don't have any idea how much.
Yeah.
And the question is, so then maybe just track what you eat, don't change anything, but just track what you eat for a week or something. And then okay, this is your current base macros and calories. I haven't done that for. I think it's great practice. I haven't done it for a few reasons. I don't trust that somebody will, when they start paying attention to stuff, I just don't have faith that they won't change from what they normally do, right? And so I'm not sure how useful that data would be after a week of them doing that. Maybe something, but you really have to be all over about it. We've got some pretty good tools, and I think you guys probably have some pretty good tools of getting a pretty good estimate, just like kind of through questionnaire, through knowing, especially if you work within a person, you kind of know their work capacity, you know their fitness, you know their body composition. There's lots of tools out there to get a pretty good estimate of like, okay, what are your base calories? And kind of start with that. And is it perfect? Probably not. Here's the thing, actually, that's a really important point. When I get it, it's really remarkable how close I can get to somebody's maintenance calories just by reading their intake questionnaire, just from doing it a lot. And again, most of my clients are CrossFitters. It helps a lot. I'm a CrossFitter myself. I can get some idea, like, okay, are they mostly like an everyday RX athlete? Are they more of a scaled athlete? That kind of factors into like how many carbs I'm going to recommend, that kind of stuff. But even let's say I wasn't that good at it, it's all theoretical to roll out of practice. And then so you start right away with an estimate. This is like a good kind of just starting point. And let's get some weigh-ins and some check-ins and some feedback. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so full. Oh my gosh, I'm starving. I felt great in this workout. I felt terrible. Those kinds of you learn a lot from the client, and then you can adjust macros accordingly if you need to. After I try not to make any changes for at least a week, 10 days, 2 weeks. I find that to be a more productive sort of running period than just having them track. And then the other reason is, at least in this kind of setting, they're paying me. And so they're ready to get started. Like, I use those first 2 weeks, again, to establish that baseline based on my estimates, more so than just them tracking. So then after that first couple of weeks, then we start pulling levers and moving, like trying to start making progress to where they want to be. So
I true that this is the clients on the line is just the nurse, and she was 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Now
That's complicated.
and have her, she's like, oh, I can't eat. Like, well, you just gave recommendations for the protein is
Yeah.
just you're still allowing your workouts, and she does training, a certain time of the day.
Yeah.
It's still the same thing. It's
Yeah.
What shift you work.
It doesn't matter. It's complicated to set up like the meal times for that stuff. Every time I get a shift with a client, even though I've done it a million times, it's like, oh, this one's going to take a little longer because you got to think about it. The complicated things when you come off shift and you go back on and all that kind of stuff. Those transition days. But no, like there's the same kind of 24-hour block, or it all comes out in the wash over the course of like a week or so, and it can absolutely be done, 100%. Here's where I would actually, to answer that first question, is when would I have somebody just track what they're doing for a week? It would be in a setting like, that might be something good if you guys haven't been paying that much attention to your own nutrition. Yeah. And just do it, and be honest with yourself. try, with the cat, don't try to change, don't like, oh, now when I'm tracking, I'm gonna eat more vegetables than I normally would. Just take honest stock of where you're at, Think of it as like testing a 1 rep max snatch or something like that. Just see where you're at and let that inform your next steps. That could be a valuable exercise. Yep. So. Yeah.
Do you have any info or thoughts on creatine for menopausal women? I've heard it can help with bone density. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, in combination with strength training, absolutely. But for sure, I feel like I don't know the data on bone. It wouldn't surprise me if creatine supplementation had beneficial
I'll let
effects.
you know if it works.
Yeah, certainly strength training is one of the most powerful things that we can be doing, all of us, particularly that population.
I've been
For-
strength training for so long,
Yeah.
nobody could believe that after 4 years of menopause that I would actually show osteopenia
Yeah.
in 1 of the 3 sites.
Really,
So because of the creatine studies, I'm like,
Yeah,
let's look at my creatine.
go for it. Yeah, 100%.
And then I'm gonna retest way earlier than they normally say to.
Okay, yeah.
They put it out like 3, 4, 5 years, and it's like, I want to see
Six
after
months.
maybe a year if it's making a difference.
Yeah.
I just was wondering if you had anything.
It's not something. It's not a specific area of literature that I
No,
follow
I
all the
know.
time, but
You
it
brought
would.
up the supplement.
It would
that's why-
not surprise me to learn that creatine in different combination with strength training, even though you've been doing it. Maybe
I used to think it was a main supplement.
no, not at all, not at all. Yeah,
And I'm like, and also in this one.
yeah, go for it.
My son's in 6th grade. How soon can you use it?
That's a good question. I would defer to an RD who works with children on that. I don't know the answer. Yeah, short answer is I don't know. I would expect somewhere that it wouldn't surprise me if it's safe and totally just fine now. But I would probably, whenever it is that he starts, you can define this, but if it gets more serious into weight training, that's when it might make sense to introduce that. High school for sure. I mean, for sure high school. I wouldn't be too concerned about taking it in middle school, but I would want to look into it and maybe talk to an RD whose specialty is with youth. Mine is not. So the youngest I work with is about 15, and I get a couple of both of those guys want for sure.
As a veterinarian who works on dogs that are sporting dogs, I usually ask people to lay down things that might change the muscle development until their growth plates are closed and the bones are fully developed and they're done growing. But in a dog, that's usually by 9 months to 12 months. So I asked my son to wait till he was done growing.
What is that, 22?
I mean, he started in high school. He seems mostly.
Mostly 30 months old.
I'm not convinced the grandkids will.
You guys started at 11. I started at 11. It's 12 years old.
Yeah. You turned out all right. So far.
The macro breakdown that you talked about, protein, carbs, fats, how much per pound? Does that hold true as we age, like from our 20s until we're in our 80s, 90s?
That's a good question. The question is that the macro breakdowns, the calories and so forth, is that true as we age? Generally, yes, I think so. I mean, obviously, the metabolic demands with a much older age are going to go down, and so.
No more 2-a-days when I'm in my 90s.
Say again?
No more 2-a-days when I'm in my 90s.
Yeah, that's my goal, though. That's my goal. I still want to be training CrossFit, running 10Ks when I'm in my 80s. No, but for large, like you think like the lifespan, for a large portion of it, I would say these recommendations generally hold true. Particularly when keep protein high as we age, 100%, and always match the other macros with energy demands. Those are going to decline. So adjust accordingly as you go. But we're kind of in a lot of uncharted territory with, you see those isolated examples of like the really athletic muscular builds in their 70s and 80s. I think over the next 10, 20 years, we're going to learn a lot about the answer to that question. Because we get more and more of the population who's been, had that information, had access to things like CrossFit, and for that long for it to actually catch up. So there's not a lot of knowledge on that, but shooting from the hip, I kind of think so.
Yeah.
Sure.
The big deal part of this on the performance end, but like, I'm not super thin, but whenever I cut or like drop 20 pounds, I feel like I lose way more than that on strength. And I'll pick it up in like some endurance stuff, but then I lose it in like raw strength. It's like I hate that balance.
Yeah, the question is about understanding the audio. The question is when cutting, when particularly focusing on fat loss, how to either handle the trade-off with strength loss or muscle loss, or can we potentially prevent it? And in our hands, with our PR, with our approach, is that's really the reason we keep protein as high as possible during the fat loss phase. I don't know what your experience is on that, but I would say for the most part with my clients, it's not uncommon to see strength either maintained or improved. I've seen, you don't really see this talked about a lot in textbooks, but we can see what we call recomposition, loss of body fat, and increase in muscle mass at the same time. There's two key elements to that. One is to maintain protein intake at that around that initial 1 gram per pound body weight. Now, if somebody loses a lot of weight, 20 pounds or so, we might bring protein down a little bit, and keep that strength training stimulus there. If you look in the literature and look at just kind of real world stuff, when people cut across the board of their macronutrients, say like just bring down calories, including protein, then the composition of the weight loss is more like 50-50 muscle fat. That's actually very documented in lots of things. So we keep that protein high and use what we do is cut from fats first, and then we get fats to like the minimum safe level. Then we start cutting carbs. That seems to be a really strong tactic for maintaining muscle mass and maintaining strength. Everyone's different. That may not be exactly your experience, but my observation with my clients is when we go about it in that sort of methodology, it works really well. I mean, I get emails from clients at the late stage of this past week, late stage of a fat loss diet, and they had like a 20-30 pound deadlift PR. It's like, that's not supposed to happen, but it does. It's like, think about science, it can work sometimes. So anyway, I'm not sure if that helps.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I think one thing, I've messed around with macros a ton over the years, and I think maybe one that I found is typically like trying to keep the protein level high, but the calorie count, at the level that would be ideal, that I end up shorting carbs too much.
That would be the other.
I drag
yes,
on
100%. So yeah, I mentioned protein a second ago, but we also protect carbs as much as we can while somebody's in a fat loss diet and following the recommendation to train as much as possible, because carbs are, again, they're the fuel for your exercise and for that recovery. Yeah, 100%. So, why don't we go ahead and take like a 3-minute break or something?
Yeah.
Just to like if you
A
go
bathroom.
to the bathroom and switch the slides and stuff.
Do a little stretch.
Yeah. Yeah. But then we can still stand. I don't want to go.
So you're exposed to actively farming. That makes sense.
Usually what I'm trying to shift off my hips. Push my hips. I have like only the 4. How far you go? That's so far. I'm not doing that. You're not doing that. Both sides or just the toboggan side? Okay, so you went up the technical side, down the path. Yeah. No, you're riding, Jordan. Yeah. I haven't done more. I put my there. I used to. I haven't been there in a while. So maybe I don't doubt that. Yeah. Let's get it done so that we can really keep doing. Now, were you running up it or were you hiking up it? So I did not get.
Yeah, thank you. That was lovely.
My friend is so excited I should try to start it.
No.
But she doesn't tell me that put her in the hospital until after I got the education. Because the race was giving me a piece of interest and giving free training. For a month. And I just got the
Just go to the kind of the
I just found out.
Okay.
And so my friend's like, you can figure out.
No. If you're gonna do it also, if you're gonna come to find something that's like unique or something local that's not gonna be in the house the first time you do it. Good on her.
I know, but this is the reason.
That's what I'm saying. Good on her. That doesn't mean you do it.
No, I know, I'm just like, why do you think I should start?
Why does this one seem like it's a good idea?
Well, now she's questions.
Oh, okay.
So now she's trying to analyze something that she knows. But why was it fun? Because she's so so I started going to swimming, and she goes, oh, that's when you had a and I'm like, oh, and she and it is. I have zero like everything was an accident.
Be a nurse, eat a lot. Eat a lot. You could be a nurse, eat a lot. I did a Spartan also, so up and down the mountain. Yeah. I've done it once. That's how much that's how I feel about college. I did it once. So yeah, I did it. And it was like nuts and I and that's when you can slow down. Oh.
And so you have to learn how to train it.
All right, friends, are we ready to pick up again?
Yeah.
I guess I can have information from my.
Yes.
And you can also.
I'm a big fan of
Turn my mic off.
finding some like a big job.
Tap it and then
Well, moving,
I'll click the button for you.
that's also a bigger issue is finding things that you can actually eat without.
Creatine in here.
It's kind of fun that-
Yeah, all inspired. Hey.
Alrighty.
Creatine
Well,
for
it's
too.
I get my,
There you go.
I eat this and my hands swell, or I eat this and this.
Yeah.
Figuring out those foods.
I discovered dried apricot.
There we go.
We're on.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You all set, Ashley?
Yeah, we're all set.
We're live.
We're live. Yeah, I want to go ahead and get going again since I don't want to go over on time. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and we only get so many of these before it starts to get really, really hot again. So I know Chicago's known for its cold winters, but I know you guys get really hot in summer too. So let's go enjoy this spring afternoon. So this one is similar to related concepts to what we just talked about, but kind of building on that, going more towards the competition and sports side of things. Nutrition for competitions and other street sports. Just a quick outline of what we're going to go over. I want to talk about quickly at the beginning here, the nutrition for performance and competition versus what we just talked about, which was primarily body compositions for general fitness. There's, again, a lot of similarities, but there's some trade-offs and things that kind of go back and forth on that we want to have a good sense of. And then we're going to talk a fair amount about how to go about preparation for competition in terms of like the time duration between where you are now and when competition is. So like weeks and months out from the competition, days ahead of competition, the day of competition, and so forth. Spend a good bit of time talking about nutrition for your single day competition, and also multiple day competitions. I think that's what we're doing. Oh, and of course, post-competition nutrition, how to get back to normal life into competition play. Quick show of hands, how many of you do the CrossFit Open? Good, about half or more. How many of you do the occasional, like Saturday competition, local CrossFit competition? Okay, so that's for a couple of you guys. And then, does anybody ever compete in multiple day competition? Sometimes. A little bit. All right. So this is primarily for. Well, that's something to be more like theoretically. You can kind of know what the game's at. Let's go when we get to that. I'll emphasize 2 more times. Sorry on the general preparation for like the CrossFit Open kind of thing, and maybe the occasional Saturday fun competition. Okay, again. So I'm not going to go through all this again. This is what we just walked through. This my point with showing this again is to reinforce the concept. This stuff all still applies, but what we want to talk about is how where do things kind of change in terms of our overall priorities for competition versus body composition. So when it comes to preparing for a competition from a nutritional standpoint, our priority shifts from sort of pursuing a body composition goal to fueling for performance and recovery. So that may mean, this is where it comes up in practical application most of the time for me, is if you're in a fat loss diet and you got a competition coming up, then we may temporarily, or we probably should temporarily increase our calories to, again, prioritize performance and recovery. Perhaps we might even err on the side of a caloric surplus and a big spend. So we're trading off body composition goals maybe for a short time, especially in competition. I'll talk about exactly how we do it. The priorities for that potential temporary bump in calories above the fat loss diet and the calorie intake level, or maybe even the maintenance level, are carbs and protein. And what we may do, and this might blow some of your minds, we might reduce the veggies a little bit, and we'll almost certainly reduce fiber and fat, especially during competition. So we're going to get more into that in the next few minutes. So let's talk about the preparation for competition timeline. From the standpoint of months and years out from the competition, we prioritize daily fueling and recovery, and this is where we address body composition to improve composition, like in CrossFit, for example. So here's where this comes up in practicality for me a lot. You get somebody signed up January 1st, because that's when a lot of people sign up for nutrition coaching. Imagine that. And they want to say, I want to lean out for the CrossFit Open. And I'm saying, well, dude, the CrossFit Open this year starts in February. we got 6 weeks, and you've got 10, 15, 20 pounds of body weight to lose. The best time to address that was about 6 months ago, right? And I have to have that conversation with new clients every year, every January, and most people are really receptive. It's a learning thing. It's actually really cool. What we're going to do then is actually we're going to think more about body composition for like the rest of this year and get you in a really good spot for next year. But for this year, we're going to just start with the basics, and we're just going to be wherever you are when it comes around. But you're not going to be at, if you're 20% body fat now, if you want to be 12%, we're not going to do that in 6 weeks. So that's the sort of timeline for improving body composition. And a good example of that is a guy at a high level is Matt Fraser, who notoriously, if you guys follow the competitive world of CrossFit at all, when he first started off with the high level, being a games contender 2014, 2015 era, he didn't pay attention to his nutrition at all. He's on record of saying that in like YouTube videos, some articles and stuff. There's one that I can think of where he talks about going home after every evening after training. He fill up a giant bowl of ice cream and like whole milk, and then maybe he has a bowl of cereal after that. And there's some value to that, some strategy that's for fueling for the next day's workout, but his body composition wasn't ideal. I don't know exactly what he did as far as nutrition over the years, but he definitely started paying more attention to it, got rid of what we call the Gains Bowl. And over the course of that 6-7 year run of his career, I mean, it's very obvious. So you guys probably don't listen to this to really appreciate, but his body composition definitely improved. He gained a fair amount of muscle mass, lots of good body fat over the course of his career. So it's a good example of how nutrition is important at the high level. On the week sort of time frame, and coming back to the, I like to use the opens for as an example because it's something that we can all kind of across more get our heads around. What we want to do is think about the timing of our diet phases in relation to competitive seasons, even if it is the 3 weeks that we all do the CrossFit Opener. So ideally, we want to time competition for maintenance diet. For example, you actually ending your fat loss phase maybe a week, 2, 3 weeks before the open, and so that you're back on maintenance calories heading into the competitive season and better fuel, rather than doing that stark contrast from ending a fat loss diet or maybe putting a fat loss diet on pause during the open, which we really want to be prioritizing performance in those workouts. So, that's just some of the weeks, order of timeline. Now let's talk about days. What do we think about days leading up to competition? We're a week or 10 days out from competition. This is where we want to reduce training volume a good bit, and what we might do is either maintain our maintenance calorie intake or maybe slightly increase it. And so, for example, you guys are really interested in this topic. There was it was on a URP podcast. It's probably 3 years ago now. The title of it is Nutrition Strategies for the CrossFit Open, and that's one of my main points that we made in that conversation was if you're doing nothing else for the Open in terms of nutrition, simply take the day off or 2 days lower training volume before the Open, but continue eating your normal training day macros, assuming you have a pretty good semblance of those who are dialed in for you. And what you're going to do is, we're going to talk about this here in the next few minutes, but effectively carb load a little bit and be sort of optimally fueled leading and going into that open workout. It's kind of a mini carb load. So that's a pretty good strategy. If we've got a competition that we're preparing for this maybe a little bit more serious, we are going to think about tapering. We'll define that here on the next slide if you've never heard of it, but we basically reduce your training volume and increase carb intake for maximizing glycogen storage and really being sure that we get our sort of optimize our chances for high level performance on the day of the competition. And with that, I do want to talk a little bit about tapering. This is going to be a little bit of an exercise science and nutrition lesson. Again, as I mentioned in the last talk, a lot of this is borrowed stolen from the endurance world. This is a science. They've got this down in running and cycling and triathlon. They've got this quite literally down to a science of how. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details, but how to do a 10-day taper, how to do a 7-day taper, how to do a 4-day taper. I'm going to talk about it in a broad sense, and again borrow some concepts and think about how we can apply that to CrossFit. And this would also apply, by the way, I'm talking about CrossFit like in the Open. It's the example that I'm using today because that's the audience. But also, if I were doing a weightlifting competition or a powerlifting competition, I would probably follow these same principles with the caveat that you got to think about weight class and making weight for that. So that goes right into it. But assuming weight is not an issue, I would do that for all of us. So just briefly, if you guys can see this okay, let our preparation and competition phases here. One of these, we got the blue line on top. We're looking at as we prepare, as we go through our training season, preparation for the competition, we're increasing our performance all throughout that because that's the blue line, right? The reason we're increasing that performance relates down to this red line on the bottom. That's our training load. Now, training load, or the concept of training load is volume. It's a theoretical formula of training volume, how much you're training in a session, times frequency, how many days a week are you training, times intensity, how hard are you working during your workouts, right? So all of these, or some if you've gone through like a strength training like phase with Mike or any of the other coaches here, we apply this concept of training load, increasing volume, frequency, and/or intensity through weight training in a very sort of linear or systematic fashion throughout a period of 2, 3, 4 months or whatever it is. Okay, so as we're entering the preparation phase and the competition phase, we're increasing our training load by manipulating one or more of these variables, and ideally our performance or our fitness in CrossFit is improving such that we're trying to peak right around the CrossFit Open, right? Well, with a taper, that is where we temporarily, right up, it's usually a 7 to 10 day period for the endurance world. The most we're ever going to get out of a CrossFitter to taper is probably a day or two. Maybe for some more serious athletes, 3 to 7 days. Reduce that training volume. So you see this come down. The training volume comes down, and the performance goes up and peaks. And if you do it right, your time is such that you're at peak performance potential on competition day. Okay, so that as we do that, primarily the main variable that we manipulate for optimizing the effectiveness of the taper at peaking is we reduce training volume and maintain frequency intensity. So, in your workout, your CrossFit workouts, you can still work just as hard, but maybe come back a bit, right? Not as I would recommend not doing the typical CrossFit taper, which is to come in and do again like a 40-minute EMOM, rowing, biking, and skiing, and call it a taper. But God, you just burned like 500 or 700 calories in the session, and now you're thinking, even if it's moderate intensity, you're kind of messing up taper. So don't do that. But maintain that frequency and intensity. And again, it's in terms of training volume. Now, I'm not here to talk about training per se, but this relates to the back of that nutrition. If you do this while maintaining your normal, so reduce this training load by reducing volume, but maintain or actually bump up your carbohydrate stores a little bit, carbohydrate intake a little bit, then we have the chance of increasing our glycogen stores. And again, that's a powerful mechanism of nutritional approach for maximizing performance potential on that performance, whatever it is. CrossFit Open, a weekend competition, or something a little more serious, and so the performance peaks on that competition. So, I mentioned this a little bit already, but just to unpack it a little bit more. What should we do as far as nutrition while tapering? Many times, again, if it's just 1 day or 2 days ahead of the open, change nothing, meaning follow your regular training day macros while you're resting. Your carbohydrate intake will be in excess of what you need on those days, but so you'll be really well topped off on come game time, right? So again, eating normally with reduced training volume will increase muscle glycogen stores. Again, that's a fancy scientific jargon. Think glycogen is to muscle as starch is to plants. It's basically the way our organism stores carbohydrate for future use in our body. We want that as high as possible for high level performance. Again, examples would be CrossFit Open workouts, or competitions, and strictly for fun. Now, just to get into this a little bit, a more sophisticated approach, again, it's more along the lines of fairly high level or even intermediate level competition that you want to take seriously. What we may do along with that taper is do something that's called carbohydrate loading, which is to not just eat at maintenance, but actually while you're reducing your training volume, increase your carbohydrate intake to about 1.5 to 2, sometimes more, that of your normal maintenance intake for 2 to 4 days before competition. So it's while your training load is going down, but you're maintaining your frequency and your intensity, we increase the carbohydrate intake for a few days before the competition, and it may be more than that, but it really just depends on the volume of the workouts in that competition. Just as a practical example, a friend of mine was in Klein. This is a guy I work out at the gym with, who's one of our top athletes. He did a competition called Fitness at the Coast. I think that was in January this year, and the first workout of that day was a 4-mile run, which for CrossFit is very, very scary. And then there were 2 or 3 other regular CrossFit workouts after that. And I told him, Chris, first of all, this guy, he's a great athlete. He's the classic example of a fly and die athlete. Like sprint, go out the gate, sprint as hard as you can, and then hold on for dear life. And Chris, for a 4-mile run, please God, don't do that. It would not work. It would not work. And I think he actually was smart about it. But I was talking with him a little bit about He'd have a plan to taper, talking a little bit about his carbohydrate intake. I had him at about 3 times his normal carbohydrate intake for 3 days before that, just to make sure he doesn't get too depleted by that large volume of running. He's just not really accustomed to. Happy to say it worked out pretty well. So that's an example. And then here's another example for in this case, a more normal, more typical example, maybe like a 150-pound female, fairly high level athlete, consuming typically around 200 grams of carbs per day, might increase to 300 grams of carbs per day for 2 to 4 days, and again, longer in some cases, just trying to make this simple. Okay, so that's, if you learned nothing else today, was the concept of tapering and how to eat optimally while doing so. Now, if you're doing this may even happen if you're just doing let me reduce my training volume, eat a little more carbs the day before my cross-training workout. Don't freak out. The scale's going to probably do some weird things. That's for a couple of reasons. Again, going back to the original kind of premise here, we are temporarily eating either in excess of our maintenance calories, or if we're in a fat loss diet phase, I do this with clients all the time, we're going to go more towards maintenance for the purpose of optimizing performance. Well, again, it goes back to calories in, calories out, sort of one of the fundamental laws of the universe as far as I'm concerned. If you manipulate calories in that way, they go back towards in excess of where you were, or maybe what you need from a maintenance standard, and then the scale's going to go up a little bit. That's one reason. 2, independent of actual body tissue changes, whether it's body fat or muscle. The other thing about carbohydrate intake, especially storing carbohydrate, fun little science fact for the day, every gram of carbohydrate that's stored in the muscle as glycogen carries with it about 3 grams of water. So there's definitely going to be some water weight fluctuations while we're doing this. A lot of times I don't have clients step on the scale during this because they just can't handle it. They just can't handle it. But just in case you do, this is normal and expected. And once you go back, we'll talk about post-competition nutrition here in a second, very briefly. You just go back to normal, and everything's going to go back to normal, and everything's normal, and everything's fine. Okay, so don't really. There's never any reason to freak out. Okay. Any questions on anything so far? I want to just keep that with. Missed the opportunity to have some interaction.
These proteins are pretty straightforward in terms of what to reach for protein. But like when you say increased carb, like what are some of the healthier top carbs that you would recommend?
So I have some recommendations that just in a second.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about how healthy they are or perceived it.
Okay.
That's a great segue to. Actually, I think it's right now. So let's talk about this. I'm going to talk about that in the context of what's going on during the day of the competition. It can also apply to like if you're training a lot in preparation for this. So, all right.
Laptop.
Oh, wow. Oh, the laptop. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Okay. There's no way you guys can see this. I'm sorry. It's way too small. But what I put up is I just wanted to give an example because I knew at this point, you're probably about an hour and a half, a little more in. I've been lecturing a lot. I wanted to give a practical example. This is actually, I'm just going to, since you can't see it, speak about it generally. It's a sample diet plan. It's one of my clients' diet plans specifically for a competition day. And you've got, it looks very similar in structure, same colors, schemes, and all the same categories of foods and all that are on every template that I send clients. But broken down with different meal times that we talked about in the last talk. Meal times are given based on sort of optimal framework for mealtime consideration. In this case, I've got breakfast, and then this particular competition had 4 workouts with the third and fourth one combined. I've got some suggestions for what to do during and during the warm up and cool down from those workouts, what to eat in between the workouts, and what to eat afterwards. Okay. This particular client is it's a male, around 205, 210 pounds, I think. And he's typical, he's a fairly high level. He's kind of like a semifinals level athlete. I don't remember the exact total for the day. It's somewhere around 500 to 600 grams of carbohydrate for today. For the competition day is the recommendation. Typical intake is somewhere in the order of 300 to 400, just for reference. And I've just got it broken down. Now, let's start with, I'm trying to decide where to start this. First things first, let's do protein. pretty standard, typical protein intake for a competition day compared to regular. Sometimes I might crack that off a little bit, just because the volume can be pretty high. For this particular client, I knew he felt would be okay. Total of around 200 for the day, spaced relatively evenly throughout the day. He's giving his normal meals, which is breakfast at home before the competition starts. There's a lunch meal in there somewhere during the long competitions. Sometimes there's long breaks between workouts. Maybe another meal in there if you had time before the second workout, and then normal dinner, normal evening shake kind of thing. Carbohydrates, let's skip fast for a second, we'll do carbs first. Carbohydrates are relatively high. You get a big dose of 100 grams in this case for breakfast. And then that is from, now let me come back to the question of what are some healthy carbs, and then we'll talk about quote unquote less healthy, but I think they have a purpose here. Your standard healthy carbohydrate sources are going to be, I can't see the list, but I'll read it to you. It's just an example. It's not all inclusive, but sample or examples of healthy carb sources that we recommend. Things like whole grains, whole bread, brown rice, white rice is fine. Whole wheat pasta, white regular pasta is fine too. Oatmeal, sweet potatoes, any fruit is a great carbohydrate source. That would be for when we talk about in the days leading up to competition, more of those, right? And I've got some of those, so that's what I've got this guy eating for breakfast and for dinner, and that a little bit of carbs in the evening as well. I've got 100, 300, 350, call it 350 grams or so of carbs on this competition day from that category of carbohydrate. We call that healthy carbs. You can also consider that low GI or low glycemic index carbs, complex carbohydrates. Those should be the bulk of your carbohydrate intake most of the time. Now, when it comes to high volume exercise, high volume training, in this case, high volume competition, you've got more workouts. I don't remember the details of it, but I know it's quite a lot. You try to get somebody to eat the additional recommended carbohydrates that I've got, 200 additional 260 grams of carbohydrates to be taking in throughout the day to fuel all that work throughout the day. It gets really difficult to get another 250, 300 grams of carbohydrates from like sweet potatoes. It's just a lot of bulk. So what we do is take advantage of our higher GI carbohydrates, things like sugary cereals, Nutri-Grain bars, frozen yogurt. Probably not going to do that in our competition, but that's an example. Lower fat baked goods. And I got some examples here in the next slide or two. But the advantage of those is that they are quick acting, they are easily digested, easily absorbed, and quickly delivered to the muscles, even while all this is going on. What you don't want is a lot of something that's really bulky, takes a long time to digest because you're not going to be able to use it at the time, and it's going to sit there in your stomach. You're not going to feel it, right? So that's where this. I don't include high GI carbs in every client. In fact, most of my, probably say 5 to 10% of my clients, even have this column on their template. But for those that either train multiple times a day, and this constant fueling issue is something that's relevant for them, definitely have that. And certainly for a competition with multiple workouts in it, we'll take advantage of our high GI carbs. Other thing to appreciate from the template here, you guys can only see like a broad colors and patterns and things. This column is healthy fats. I've got, like we talked about in the last discussion, we've got fats further away, like very minimal to ideally closer to zero fats during the competition time window. With the regular allocation of daily fats spread further away in the morning and the evening, like after the competition is fine. Also, notice very little vegetables throughout the day. In fact, I recommend zero. You don't want something like a big heavy salad you don't want to eat that for lunch when you've got a 4-mile run coming up after after lunch or whatever. Because that's got something with a lot of fiber in it. It's going to take a long time to digest. It's going to cause some bloating, maybe some GI distress and so forth. So we really want to avoid that. So takeaway for competition eating: keep protein relatively steady, carbohydrates relatively high. It's quite high depending on the volume. Fats and fibers, you want to keep those low. Okay, so that's basically again. Hopefully, there's some value in that, even though it's just. Here, I'm summarizing a lot of the same things we just talked to. So I'll go through it a little bit quickly. Meal timing: we want to eat about 1 to 3 hours for that first event. So I have clients wake up earlier so they can do that. You don't just rolling out of bed, crashing in registration, and starting the competition. definitely want to have a good meal before competition. The meal composition should be high carbohydrate, moderate protein, low fat, low fiber. Carbohydrate sources should be, again, these quick-acting hydrolyzed sources. This is during the competition, right? Things like candy, dry fruit, sports drinks, right? We had that discussion, good for you or bad for you in the beginning of that last talk, right? And I put up the sports drinks almost uniformly. The answer was that's bad for you. And I think, again, coming back to that, the same thing I think we all agreed on, context is everything, is it not? Absolutely, sports drinks are kind of a disaster if you are, the overweight 12-year-old that is, obviously, the prevalence of juvenile diabetes or type 2 diabetes in that population is rampant. And it's because they're drinking way too much of this stuff. That's what we would say, that's an out of context, inappropriate application of the high GI carbohydrate. But you've got a high-level athlete or even an intermediate-level athlete that's doing all this work during the day, this sports drinks can be a very strategic source of carbohydrates with buildable effects. In fact, you get all the benefits. Again, energy for that, for the working muscles and keeping that carbohydrate available. So those are excellent. These are quick and easy to digest. The other thing is there's, just to mention since I brought it up, the interesting thing about these high GI sources, you might say, well, gosh, I'm going to get a massive sugar spike, a massive increase in sugar. Well, it turns out that with contractile activity of the muscles, let's just say we're contracting the muscles using them, the metabolic rate is high, it has a really profound and powerful effect to regulate blood glucose. I wouldn't expect to see much of any increase in blood glucose when used in this application where there hasn't been this adequate activity going on to support that. It's when sports drinks, candy, and all this, what we would call junk food, is consumed in excess of the metabolic demand of the muscle, that's when we have our problems, right? So, in that context, it's really, really important when it comes to sugar. And then a practical tip on nutrition during a competition is monitor hunger and satiety cues throughout the day. Basically, what I tell athletes is to sip on your beverages or your shakes throughout the day. The last slide, I don't know if you can see it, but I did have some protein shakes with some workout carbs recommended in there. So sip on those throughout the day in between events. Have these snacks available. And I don't have pictures of it, but like things like quick acting proteins, well, easy protein like bars, beef jerky, that kind of thing. Nibble on that stuff throughout the day. Snack on your candies and whatnot. Sip on your drinks. Ideally, you never feel too hungry, nor do you feel too full throughout the day. Basically, kind of always ready to work out, right? But you don't want to, I won't ask people to show hands, but I know I'll show mine. The first couple of CrossFit competitions I ever did, even though I know this stuff, I just forgot to. Because you're excited, you're nervous, you don't really feel like you're drinking, but then it's like, oh gosh, I feel like I've got this massively difficult, very scary workout coming up in an hour, and I haven't eaten since, maybe it's 2 in the afternoon, I haven't eaten since 9, I'm in trouble, right? So you really want to avoid that. So you always, whenever you feel too hungry, too full, always ready to work. Questions on that before? Okay, so that's single day competition. For multi-day competitions, this is brief. All of the single day competition considerations apply, but there's a couple of others. So that recovery meal after the day's events are over is very, very important. Because again, we talk about this whole concept of muscle glycogen. And again, I'm trying to not make this too sciencey, but you can't really get away from talking about muscle glycogen when this topic comes up. So if it's a really high volume, really hard day, with our best efforts of eating and fueling while the competition is going on, probably could benefit from increasing the carbohydrate dose. The general recommendation is that's actually a type of a high carbohydrate meal should be about 1 to 1.5 grams of carbohydrate per body weight. So significant dose. So in my case, it might be somewhere around 200 grams of carbohydrate per that day. We go back to my client's slide with Greg. I had him at 200 grams of carbs after that meal, and then another 35 or so for bed. So we're around call it 1.5 or so, between 1 and 1.5 grams of carbs per body weight. And again, that's really important for this concept of replenishing muscle glycogen. I just said I'm not going to make it too sciencey, but here I have a graph. Can't help it. I'm recovering. I freaking love graphs. So I miss them. I'm not in the university setting anymore. I miss this stuff. But this is just a diagram showing what. This is where. Okay, we can take a step back. Going back to that concept of meal timing, I said in the last discussion of like just general population kind of stuff, general health, meal timing isn't that important. It's not. But for competition, particularly for multi-day competition, it is. It's been pretty well worked out that if you have this is looking at glycogen synthesis, the rate of glycogen synthesis after exercise, when the meal was ingested immediately post-exercise, call it within 30 minutes or so, versus 2 hours later, you stand around and chit chat, your competition's over, but you're just like debriefing and when you forget to eat, you don't eat until 2 hours later. Well, you do so at your detriment because you're not replenishing the glycogen nearly as quickly as you do if you eat sort of closer to a meal as soon as possible. Really, is where it should be. This is stuff that's important for like the really serious competitors. Again, I know most of you said that's not you, but there you have it. This is something that I would be all over at the top level athletes. Like you need to get that meal in right after if you care about your performance tomorrow. So. And then also here's where hydration or electrolyte supplementation may come into play. I mentioned this to you guys a bit ago. Definitely want to monitor hydration. When I get just to mention hydration, rough number for all of us is about half of your body weight in ounces is a starting point, more or less, but probably more than that if driven by thirst. In a competition, I'm probably quite a bit on the higher end of that. And then, especially if heat stress is a factor, again, I would recommend standard electrolyte supplement, about 1,500 milligrams of sodium, 300 to 500 of potassium. Definitely want to do that when you have a multi-day competition scenario. And then this is it. I think we're coming up on the end here. Post-competition nutrition, this is where it's time to party, to have some fun, right? We're coming up on that. Again, truly, this is where you have a little bit of fun. I think this really applies to all levels. You see the CrossFit Games athletes at the end of their competition, even at like this week in this semifinals. I guarantee you, tomorrow afternoon they're going out for pizza. They're going out for deep dish if you're local, so not, which is too bad for them. Because we're having deep dish later today. But no, there's actually some more serious. So that is, it's relatively serious one. Is actually have some fun. It's time to relax a little bit, and that's because stress management is the focus here. Competitions are stressful. Exercise is supposed to be fun. I had this competition. I have been more broad system clients all the time. There's a lot of really mediocre athletes out there that take this stuff way too seriously, and it's like affecting their overall quality of their life. And then we have this. We need to talk about stress management. Well, even if that also applies to where it's perfectly fun and happy and normal and good to go do a weekend competition. You've been it's been on your mind to some degree all week long, or maybe longer than that. With a bit of anxiety. It's important to down-regulate from some of that stuff. The post-competition meal is your first opportunity to do that, and I always encourage. So here you have a nutrition guide, and the nutrition coach telling you, go eat pizza. Like you need to go eat pizza. It's good for your brain. So have some fun. That's important. The carb glycogen replenishment concept is again pretty important. Not as critical because you're not preparing for the competition next day, but you are getting back to your normal life, your normal training. You want to probably do that as soon as possible, so you do want to have that on top of mind. If you're going out for pizza or for whatever it is, your lunch, your carbs are going to be okay. I also do recommend, this is like now speaking a little bit more reasonably, I always advocate for maintaining protein intake, even with your fun and cheat meals. That's usually not much of a problem, but that's just something to think about. Just don't go completely wild and only live on like popcorn or something for a couple of days, just because you're done in the competition. Prioritize sleep and recovery. It's always critical, but again, that's part of that stress management and getting back to routine. Kind of come down from that high, and then basically get back to on track on eating and drinking in your routine in a day or two. It's nothing too complicated there. It's presumably you're going to go back. If it's a really high volume competition with multiple days, that kind of thing, it may take a while. It may be good for you to take some time away from the gym completely. But I'm a big, for just the general population, I'm a big advocate of just getting right back to normal. And there's nothing really too crazy about that post-competition nutrition. But if you're going right back, it may depend on if you're getting into an intense training cycle again right away for the next competition. There may be some other kind of nuances there. But in general, just be normal. It's kind of one of my mantras on this coach. guys, there you have it. That's what I have for competition, for nutrition for competition. Again, the bias there was very much towards CrossFit. I would apply it to other strength sports as well. Got a heavy dose of nutrition for endurance competition, which again, if you think about CrossFit, it is kind of an endurance competition in a way, especially like multiple events in a single day kind of thing, or sports, especially if you have a multiple day event as well. So again, I hope that was valuable for you. I want to thank you guys again. Thank you to the cells for having me. Thank you to you all for your attention and your great questions. I'll take some more if you have them now, but before we stop, I definitely want to express my gratitude for you guys taking your time to come listen to me on a really pretty Saturday afternoon. So thank you for that. Myself there.
This question's not for pre or post competition, but specifically during ultra running and feeling learning to feel, especially that part where your GM's trying to shut down. So
So
just if you have any golden nuggets